Listen, print media is not dead. By no means, by no means. But I do think that many people in the industry would agree with me when I say that it has most certainly taken a beating over the last several years. And not just because of, the internet taking over a lot of media, but, the pandemic took over and ad space had become relatively difficult to acquire. And I think one prime example of surviving this madness in print media is one of the very few independent alternative magazines remaining in print, and that would be FOLIO Weekly Magazine, based out of Northeast Florida. And they have a large distributorship as well as a very comprehensive web presence. And I got to speak with one of their senior team members, Mr. Rob Nicholson, recently. And we talked about a little bit of everything, his role at Folio and the role of print media in general. So let's just get right to it. Kickstands up, baby. Rob, super nice guy. I met him on several occasions, and we got to talk on the podcast recently about his role at Folio Weekly Magazine. Now, I wanted to start out by saying that, Contrast Project Lounge and the Contrast Project, we are in no way affiliated with Folio, but they are certainly good friends of ours. Now, you can find the Contrast Project on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, of course. And we would certainly like for you to like, share, and comment. And on the YouTube channel, of course, like, share, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Just go ahead and smash it. And ring that bell so you get notifications for all of our new and upcoming episodes, which are flying in fast and furious. Rob and I spoke at length about the future of print media, and in particular with Folio and their involvement in the Northeast Florida region. And they're just a phenomenal, in my opinion, and I told him so in the podcast, in our interview, I told him that in my opinion, it is, and I've seen a lot of the other alternative magazines, and I do believe that Folio Weekly has had, reached the crown jewel of those magazines. There are many out there. There were many out there, and a lot of them have folded. They're paper versions, and some of them have gone under completely. So, without any further ado, let's get right on with the interview. Rob, welcome back, kids. And joining me on this episode is Rob Nicholson from Folio Weekly Magazine. Rob, how are you?
Tracy, I'm doing great, and it's great to see you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely, and not just because I'm biased with Folio. I a former employee of the older guard, and I happen to think, quite honestly, I really do believe that Folio Weekly Magazine is truly one of the better independent alternative magazines around anywhere.
Well, we sure are glad to hear that, because I think so too. And there really aren't many of us around anymore.
No.
Between the pandemic and really a couple of other factors, the cost of paper, which is out of this world, it just changed everything, and Folio managed to hang on. Now, I think it's been getting some great advice from someone who's got a lot of intellect and a lot of imagination. So that's
Yeah.
been helpful. I came on board with the brand new publisher, and I think there's a lot of insight there and brilliance and media know-how. So I'm proud to be a part of this team. I'm from Jacksonville. I was raised in Jacksonville. I wasn't born here, but I moved here 2 months later. And I've associated or been reading Folio for 35 years. So
Oh yeah.
to be a part of the team now is really an honor for me. So it's an honor.
Yeah, even before the uh, previous version of Folio was in print for 33 years, and now the new incarnation 2.0 Folio Weekly, and with the acquisition of EU, it truly is a remarkable entertainment magazine and a good source of not just entertainment and calendars of events and that kind of thing, but the contributors are just astounding. And in fact, not only are you the director of sales, advertising sales, and print distribution, but you're also a contributing writer. I noticed that you've done several interviews along the way too.
Yes. Again, and they let me do that because I love it, not because I'm particularly talented. But I will say I did work for 25 years in radio broadcasting, so
Right.
I've got a little bit of a background here. And one of my positions, I was the vice president of programming for the United States for a company called Radio 2000. But I was stationed right in the navel of the country in Springfield, Missouri. So I ran 3 radio stations and a regional magazine. And even though I had studied media and communications in college and had knew a bit about print, running 417 magazine, which is still in publication today, I sold my interest in it over 20 something years ago, but it's still in publication. And a lot of the reason is now they were subscription based. We are subscription based, but it doesn't cost anything.
Right.
But they're you have to pay for those subscriptions. But that's just one of the differences. But they've also done a lot of diversification and kept up with the times. And I wish that more of the smaller papers would have had the foresight to do that. But again, it's an honor to work for one of the only ones left in the country. And Folio, you just say the word and people know exactly what you mean.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And like you were saying, with many of the other alternative magazines, pretty much have folded print production altogether, and some still survive online. Uh, but it's really not the same. And Shelton and I have talked about this, several times. And even back when I was at Folio, we had talked about, the fact that, in all honesty, print is not dead, but it sure has taken a beating.
No, print is not dead. In fact,
No.
part of the advertising department or the director, I'm out and about a lot, and I get to talk to a lot of people. And even younger people like that physical paper in their hands to open it. It's not. I don't want to call them old people because then I would be an old people. But the people just like having the physical piece. And I'll even tell you, even when I'm editing, because there's things I have to edit on my end of the thing. I will still print the online version and edit it in hard copy, and then I'll go
Right.
back and put it in. So I don't know. That's just me. I just do like it. And then I also I share a home with my brother, and I'll take home the printed copies off from the copier, and just so he can read them because he's not a computer person at all. He's a subcontractor. If you give him a hammer and nails, he's doing great. But you give him a keypad, he doesn't know what to do. So I print it off and take it to him, and he loves to read it. He loves to read it.
Oh, and you were talking about the feel of the paper in your hands, and to many people, when they hear that, sometimes they think, well, that is just so old school. But it may or may not be so old school, but it's a reality. People that do read and read books and read magazines, they really do enjoy having that physical copy in their hands. In fact, the entire time I was growing up, my father sat on the back porch with the newspaper. It would be delivered to the house, and he'd sit out there and just read the newspaper. And when the cost of the Times Union went through the roof, he was disappointed because, he says, I really don't like their online subscription thing.
It isn't the same.
No.
When you think about it, Tracy, for how many years have we been reading books, newspapers, and magazines? And then the technology that we also at Folio we're dealing with now, we have a very large online presence. I think
Yes.
mostly because it's just that much more accessible. But it doesn't negate the fact that the, for the amount of time that the technology has changed the industry a great deal, is a splash in the pan compared to how long people have been reading books and magazines. So,
Oh, yeah.
I think that we're learning how to use the medium. And if you look at it, I'll tell you, I'm not telling any secrets that people wouldn't know. When you pick up the hard copy, which comes out once a month in print, we have over 600 locations throughout Northeast Florida, from Fort Clinch to Matanzas Bay, and then west. It's hard to draw a straight line west because it kind of goes in and out, but 600 locations, and it it goes, it literally flies off the shelf every time. People
Yeah.
love that much. It's a historical document of what's going on. But what you read in the printed piece, you'll find we're very choosy about that content. So there's no, we don't put, like, for instance, one of the things that Folio is known for is the list, the entertainment listings. Well, the
Yes.
cost of paper right now is, and I don't think it's going to come back down that much. But the cost is so prohibitive, we can't publish them. We couldn't afford to publish those lists. So that's where we use our online side, so we can still publish those lists, and it makes sense. You're standing, you're out on a Friday evening, and you're wondering what you're going to do tonight. Well, you can go on your phone and look at our listings. So
Yes.
that is more functional. That's a more functional use of it. Whereas the printed piece, we don't do a lot of hard driving stories in that. First of all, we don't get left or right. There's plenty of that out there. We don't need to do it.
Right.
We're here to provide local news and entertainment. Well, for instance, there's an issue getting ready to come out as of this recording, and we were able to squeak in under the line just barely, but we were able to squeak in under the line the Van Gogh exhibit that just opened in
Oh,
Jacksonville, or is opening tonight, I think. We were able to
yeah.
get it on the media part of it. We were able to get it into print and get that word out. So we're trying to be choosy about the content of the print piece, so that every page is something that you could be interested in, and we're giving you that reading. In terms of the digital issue that comes out the first of every month, again, the listings, it's where we get to do interviews like this. When you were talking about the interviews, this is where I do them, is in the digital piece. Just to give you an idea of how my last 2 days have been going, Tracy, I was supposed to go to the media day for Van Gogh, and found out I needed to help support one of our theaters, the Thresham Horn, and so they had set up an interview with an artist that's coming in later this month. So I sent another reporter friend of mine to go cover the Van Gogh thing, and I did the interview like you and I are doing, and that'll be out and about on all our social platforms. And our social platforms is a whole other thing we haven't even talked about.
Oh, yeah.
This morning I needed to do yet another interview with another story that's coming out in the print piece for something that's happening in the month of October. Then I had somebody come in to the studios today, and we did that recording, and then now I'm here with you. So it changed, again, the way your day goes kind of changes. It can change at the drop of a hat, but the technology is there to support that. But it's
Right.
not, the technology should always be a tool, in my opinion. It shouldn't be the reason. I don't know if that's the right word for it. The reason we do
I
this
get what
is
you're
we love
saying.
our
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love our community, and we know a lot of people do love our community as well. And so the printed piece, we like to make sure that each page is something worth reading or looking at, and even if it's an advertiser, our advertisers, we don't just throw anybody in there. We like to screen our advertisers a little bit too.
Yeah, and not only the whole package, the whole folio weekly paper product. A lot of people look forward to seeing what is going to be on the cover next.
Always. That is always that's the biggest question is what's going to be on the cover. Um, we again, I love working for this publisher. He vowed up front to preserve the integrity of the magazine, and so we don't sell even a fraction of it. It is all creative content that you see when you see those covers. So it makes it even more exciting to see what the designers and the general manager and the publisher all had in mind. And I've literally left here on a Friday afternoon, Tracy. We had had it all laid out. We didn't have to submit till Monday, so everybody was going to kind of, over the weekend, check it out, make sure we didn't miss anything. By the time I got to the office at 9 o'clock Monday morning, Tommy Hazouri had died. This was literally a year ago this month. Tommy Hazouri, who's a great son of Jacksonville, and a great contributor to the society. And it was obvious to the managers here that needed to be the cover. So we left with one cover on Friday, and it was all designed, everything. And by the time we got back to work on Monday at 9 o'clock, it had changed completely, and it was Tommy Hazouri.
Oh yeah, yeah. And speaking of Mr. Hazouri, over the years, and he was not only a great leader and a great man and a friend to a lot of people. And I know that he used to go to Cotton's Barbecue and have informal meetings with his staff on North Main Street. He was known for that, and he was instrumental. I mean, he was the driving force behind bringing the Jacksonville Landing to town and getting it developed. And some time ago, I came across a portfolio of magazine and newspaper clippings that dealt primarily with the Jacksonville Landing and Mayor Tommy Hazouri, or not Hazouri, but Jake Godbold, and and yeah, Jake Godbold, and I at the time, it was just a real good piece of history that I'd found. And I decided that rather than having it sit around my living room collecting dust, that I would donate it to you guys. And I brought it into the office there some time ago and handed it over to Teresa. So it's floating around somewhere there in your office.
That's a great story. I'm glad to hear that. And that's another thing is we have all 35. I think with the exception of one issue, and I could be even wrong on that because again, there's bigger minds here than mine. But we have every single copy that had ever been published, and that's from back. And people ask me too, Tracy, why is it called Folio Weekly Magazine, but we don't publish weekly anymore? Folio Weekly Magazine is the brand name. That is the copyright
Right.
name. One day, maybe all this craziness will stop. I'm not so sure I'm going to put too much money on that, but maybe it will stop and we can go back to publishing. But it would be ridiculous for us to try to publish once a week with the cost of paper. It just doesn't make any sense. Anybody can see that. The numbers just
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Towards the final days, and for I suppose for years, and many people from the old guard of folio would attest to this fact. But when when it was cost prohibitive with any given edition, that sometimes they had to change the number of issues or magazines, actual magazines that they would distribute to different locations. In other words, one drop point would routinely have, 20 copies dropped off. And well, if it was a bad week in advertising or something, Sam was able to flip the numbers around and, maybe only deliver 10 copies to that drop. So it was astonishing sometimes the way he juggled the magazine to keep it afloat. It really was.
I'm very glad that we don't have to do that anymore. We publish the same amount, but we have to constantly watch the bottom line. Any business you do, there's no
Sure.
business that you don't have to watch it, and Folio is no different than any other business. But boy, is it a fun business.
I know. And your team, when we go back to talking about some of the, the covers and everything, but your creative team, your designers and graphics people and so forth, they really have put some work into the inner pages of the magazine as well. They're not just plain pages, with a photograph of, whoever is being interviewed, or, the ads that run down the side of the page or what have you. The aesthetics of the new magazine, the look is great. It's actually pleasing to the eye, and it's fun to read. And really, I give high marks to your creative team.
Well, thank you very much. I got to tell you, we are a very small but mighty team, and they do a great job on that side of things. I tell you, there's never an editorial meeting or an issue that comes out that we hadn't already put thought into. All right, how do we make this one better? So literally, we just are sending the September copy issue off to print right now this afternoon, and we've already been talking about October, and then on Monday we'll have an editorial meeting, and we'll solidify October as to how we want to direct it, and what goes where, how we're going to do it, and then what can we make it better. And I love that part and the passion of this team is that every so you have to come to a stopping point at some point, or you're never going to get anything done. But
Right,
once
right.
we finish it, we get it out, and then we think about how do we make the next one even better. That's a great, I don't know, it's a great way to spend my day.
Absolutely. Outside, uh, uh, before and during your time spent well, I would say, at Folio Weekly Magazine. You have a remarkable background that I was going to talk to you about too. Your background in radio and some other fantastic endeavors. Tell us a little bit about your days in radio.
Well, funny enough, so I went to Fletcher High School. Like I said, I was raised here. I wasn't born here. I was born on the other side of the state line in Albany, Georgia. But I was raised here, and I graduated from Fletcher, and I had the opportunity to go away to school, and I went to Atlanta because I wanted to be. I was fit to be tied, and I needed to be somewhere where I could really be challenged. And Atlanta wound up being that place. It wasn't the first place, but it wound up being that place. And so I went to Georgia State University, and they're probably more known for the business school and the law school. But what I loved about it was that it's downtown. In fact, part of the campus is in the old underground of Atlanta. And part of the campus also, they had at the time one of only three 100,000 watt on FM dial. You can only be that's the highest amount of wattage you can be at is 100,000 watts. Even though nobody operates at that, that's the highest wattage you can be at. And
Mhm.
they had a radio station. It was owned by the students. It was run by the students. It was not run by a department or the curriculum. It was run by the Student Activities Council. And so we literally had hands-on in college how to run a radio station. Admittedly, we were nonprofit. We didn't sell advertising, but
Right.
we did learn a lot. And in the meantime, it was an alternative radio station, and we had a lot of there were a lot of music careers have come from that. At the time I was there was a little old duo called the Indigo Girls, just getting their start. Had them on the show. Uh, I know somebody else you may have heard of, RuPaul used to come around the studios because he was just getting his start. He had been doing what he was doing, but he just hadn't hit yet. REM, another band that would come by. So I mean, it was just an amazing time, the '80s, and to be in radio and one of the most powerful ones in the country. So that's where I got bitten by the bug. Radio was not what I was. It was not the path that I was planning on taking with a journey, but it wound up being a great distraction, and I wound up making a 25, 30-year career out of radio alone. Like I say, along the way, I also was picking up print um, and magazines and newspapers and understanding how those work. So that's kind of where it all began. And one other thing that really helped me a lot was that I just happened to be standing in the right place at the right time. And again, I was at a downtown university. And at that time, it was a commuter university. You didn't live on campus. You lived around the campus, but you didn't live on campus. And but the Capitol was in our side yard, and I wound up getting hired by the press office at the House of Representatives for a couple of years. And got to tell you, that was an invaluable uh, position to have because until you really know how the legislative process works, it's sickening.
Right.
I do subscribe to I subscribe to the old adage: the two things you do not want to see being made are laws and hot dogs. And it was I learned quite a bit from that. So it was a great beginning. I just was lucky, and I guess I had the right attitude about it, and was really able to get a nice, good, firm start in media. And then I've gotten to kind of wiggle around. Even with the different there's television, there's print, there's radio. It's still a very small world compared to what the world is like. It's tiny.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so there's just the news cycle. If you were in, in a newsroom, I know that it's hectic in putting together, Folio Weekly. But if you were to, I would say, working in one of those really hotbed newsrooms, the news cycle just rolls along so fast. I mean, it's like lightning. Like you say, you leave the office on Friday, and when you come back Monday, everything's changed. Well, uh, the, the way the world is, and the way this country is, and the way everything is, as far as the news goes, it's just got to be mind-boggling if you're, someone who works in one of those really, like I say, a hotbed newsroom.
Well, and it's a perfect example of what I was saying before of why we really try to keep folio local. Um,
Hmm.
I don't, I'm a little too old to be working in that hotbed with typewriters. So I'm happy over here at our little weekly or our little magazine. You know the difference. I don't know if you know this, Tracy. The difference between a magazine and a newspaper is staples.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
It's stapled together, it's a magazine. It doesn't matter the quality or type of paper. It's just if it's stapled together, it's a magazine. If it's loosely folded together, it's a paper. but at any rate, so you're right about these networks and of course again technology got involved and it all really expanded. And that's why I like the. I think I've always had kind of a dream about the small town newspaper. And Folio is not a small town newspaper, but it has kind of a feel of it, and I like that comfort.
Yeah, uh, uh, like you said, keeping it local, the the feel of it, the fact that it is hyper local. It talks about local, local politics or local entertainers, local bands, local artists, people that are, making their mark around town by helping people. Uh, the vast amount of people that volunteer their time for the good of their fellow man in Jacksonville is it's just phenomenal. Sometimes I've seen some really great things going on with people that I know personally, as well as people that I've never met, and that they're making such a contribution to the overall aesthetic of Jacksonville. The whole fabric of the community is brought together by people like that.
Well, and as you know, our office is located downtown now. We're literally right in the heart of downtown Jacksonville, just off of what used to be Hemming Plaza, is now called JWJ Park, or James Weldon Johnson Park. And so from that standpoint, it is feel like you kind of standing in the heart of the city. You have to continually remember that Jacksonville is the largest city land-wise in the
Hmm.
continental United States, or the contiguous
Right.
United States. Everywhere you go, there's water. There are things to do outside. It's just you can't even name all the things you can do in Jacksonville. My only thing is that I'm almost kind of like, could somebody close the gate? Because I think we're getting a few too many people around us, and we're running out of space. But I love the different neighborhoods. I love the beaches. I was raised at the beach. I love Riverside and Avondale. I love parts of the north side. I just, our port is amazing. Our Navy bases and Air Force bases are incredible.
Hmm.
Just the communities, and I'm really involved with. I'm from a very a military family, and very involved with the American Legion, and so I'm conscious of that side of our community as well. And it's just it's a great mix, and again, I don't want to sell it too much because I don't want too many people to come here and drive up prices even higher.
And you were saying that there's so much to do around Jacksonville. It boggles my mind sometimes when I hear people say that there's nothing to do in Jacksonville. Well, those of us that were, I was born and raised here. I'm born and raised on the north side of town, and have lived in practically every area. But there's a ton of things to do, and a lot of the things that are available for people to do in Jacksonville, if they're not within walking distance, they're certainly within a short drive. And most are either, most of these things that I'm talking about are either free or low cost. You don't need to spend a fortune to find something really fun to do in Jacksonville.
Oh no, there's plenty of things to do that don't cost a dime. So
No.
if anybody says there's nothing to do, they're not trying.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as far as Duval County, Greater Duval County goes, it's probably got some of the most um, parks, uh, state parks of any state in the country. From what I understand, the last numbers I was looking at, I think it's right up there in the most number of state parks in any city in the country. So, I mean, that's something to say. Now, not all the parks are, enormous. Some of them are just big enough for a picnic table, and and several of them, yeah, and several of them are indeed, have boat launches because we got the river running through it. Um, and the water features around Jacksonville are beautiful. I mean, we may not have the mountains, we don't have the snow-capped mountains here, but we got plenty of woods and trails, hiking trails, riding trails. We got the beach within a short drive, and you live there, so there's no end in of the list of things that you can do in and around Duval County. I mean, there really isn't.
The mountains give me a great place to go on vacation because I live on vacation.
Yeah, there's some pretty places around the country. There are, without a doubt, there's some gorgeous places in our country without having to. And here's another thing too, without having to fly to another country to go see something cool. It's right here in our own backyard, wherever your backyard may be.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Although, however, there's two places uh, in the world that are on my bucket list, and one of these days I'm gonna get there. I've already lived in Costa Rica, so that's a beautiful place too. Uh, the Australia is on the list, and Santorini is on the list. My God, that place is beautiful.
Those are something I'd like to try too. So it's a crazy world, but it's a beautiful world, and but I
Yeah,
like my little corner of the world.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm happy. I'm happy right where I'm at. I actually, uh, a few years ago, I had moved out of Duval County, but most of my contacts and people and friends and business dealings are all in Jacksonville. I live in Middleburg, so I'm a Clay County resident full time. My little chunk of heaven is out here on a couple of acres of land out in the woods. I got a boatload of feral cats out here that I talk to on the regular.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity is endless.
Well, Rob, I want to thank you so much for being with us on the program today. I will let you know when I'm finished editing, when I have it up and running for you. I'll definitely send you some still frames from our interview ahead of time that you can
Oh, that'd
use.
be great.
Yeah, I can rip out the still frames and audio, and everything is editable. And
I would
in
love
in
that.
close. Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. I can like I was telling you before. This project started in a studio several years ago with Shelton and I doing video interviews with in-house, in real life, guests in the studio, and that lasted a couple of seasons. And and then the pandemic hit, and we decided as a group that it might not be such a good idea to have guests coming into that small studio. Uh, and some people actually, were reluctant to do so, and take off their mask or that kind of thing when it was at its peak. And then the studio suffered a couple of floods, and being that I'm out here, yeah, and being that I'm so far away from the studio is in Murray Hill, and being that I'm so far away from Murray Hill, a daily trip into town was getting to be expensive on the gas bill. As much as I love it, I had to curtail that myself, and it's a long ride for me. And I decided to just put together my own little podcast studio here, and it's working out fine. And it's a learning curve, but like I was telling you before, I've upgraded a lot of the equipment. I've upgraded, the software that I use, and it's a joy. It's so fun. Uh, I I would love to see Folio doing a regular podcast. That would be fantastic.
It's already on the table, but again, we're a small but mighty team, and we can't bite off too much more than we can chew, or we don't want to choke. So,
Well, I tell you, it's been a joy talking to you, and I know I'll see you in real life one of these days soon. Whenever I come whenever I come into town and I make it to the urban core, I usually try to stick my head in the door there at your office.
it's always great to see you, Tracy. Listen, have a great weekend. I'm getting ready to head to the beach.
Good for you. Enjoy. Until next time, we'll talk to you. Peace.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
Yep. That was a wonderful interview that I had with Rob, and in my closing thoughts, I can't say enough good things about Folio Weekly Magazine, the team that they have there. As you heard in the interview, a remarkable small team that just plain gets the job done, and it's remarkable that the magazine is going past 35 years in print. A lot of, like we said, a lot of print magazines have stopped, no longer in business. Some have opted to go completely digital, which is fine too, but a lot have shuttered their doors. And Folio just keeps on kicking. They just keep on going, and they keep producing a quality product. And I'm not just saying that because a whole lot of the people that work there and write for them are friends of mine. It's a great organization. It's a great magazine. And if you don't already get it, if you're watching this program or listening to the podcast, wherever you receive this content, you can get hard copies of FOLIO Weekly. You can find them online. It's a very comprehensive website. All the information that is in print is available online as well. And they also, as I mentioned, they acquired EU Magazine. So there's many components to, the operating of FOLIO Weekly, and comes highly recommended by the Contrast Project. So listen, like I always say at the end of each broadcast, that I'm thinking of you. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in, subscribing to our podcast, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and I, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you so much. In the meantime, guys, take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time, peace.